Welcome everyone to the launch of FreeFall Magazine's Volume 30, Number 2, home of the 2019 contest winners. We'd like to acknowledge and thank everyone who entered the contest this year. We know how vulnerable it can be to share your work, and we appreciate that you chose us to participate with your writing. This year's judge was Gary Barwin. Thank you, Gary, for being part of such an amazing issue. The subheading of tonight's event is Ode to the Independent Bookstore. Some of the recordings were done in one of the 4 independent bookstores Calgary is very lucky to have, and other readers told us who their favorite independent bookstore was across the country. Independent bookstores are so important to the literary community. We encourage you to find your closest one and shop local. We have 15 readers tonight. You'll see some faces you recognize and some you might not. As usual, we have a wonderful range of new, up-and-coming, and established writers from our community participating with us. This might be my favorite part about working for FreeFall. We have so many old friends that come back and share their writing with us, but we get to work with so many new and up-and-coming writers from across the country, and it's fabulous. Tonight, our readings will open and close with music from local talent Zach Running Coyote. Zach is a musician, songwriter, actor, and playwright in Calgary. He has written and produced multiple plays, all of which include his own original music. And if you ever get a chance to see one, I encourage you to do it. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Quick way, my name is Zach Running Coyote, and this song is called Sweetgrass Saint, and it's an offering for residential school survivors. Moccasins on prairie grass, big brown eyes, complex just like stained glass. Straight black hair and a subtle smile, her gaze stretches across the prairies for miles and miles. Mom looks on with a loving eye, but a tear wells up as inside her soul she cries. For her sweet grass saint, drifting like a sage smoke prayer, they tried to seal her fate. Cutting off her long black hair, they couldn't see she was a sweet grass saint. They took her to a four-walled school, tied her tongue with an Anglo-Saxon rule. They showed her the love of Christ with the buckle of a belt, and turned those big brown eyes to a dullish gray. They stole her innocence, they broke her will, they bruised her back, and shattered the stained glass windows in her soul. But she's a sweet grass saint, drifting like a sage smoke prayer, they tried to seal her fate. Cutting off her long black hair, they couldn't see she was a sweet grass saint. She's a sweet grass saint, drifting like a sage smoke prayer, they tried to seal her fate. Cutting off her long black hair, they couldn't see
I'm Carol Harvey-Stesky, and I'm in Toronto. I just wanted to start by thanking FreeFall and the sponsors Frontenac House and AWCS, as well as a big thank you to Gary Barwin for choosing my poem. I was really honored, but it's made even more special by the caliber of writer that he is. So my thanks to him. I wanted to do this recording in a bookstore in downtown Toronto called Knife Fork Book, which is a poetry only store. It's just the storefront is temporarily closed because of the pandemic. So I wanted to send a shout out to Kirby for continuing to connect people and poetry. And the web address is knifeforkbook.com. Check it out. And now I'm going to read my poem called Curmudgeon. Half submerged in the algae sluice, like a greasy green egg, sunny side, greeting the day with a grudge. This bullfrog is thick as a grown man's fist, and Tony Soprano tough. His whole body's an open mouth, flipped inside out. All day he waits, self-basting and belching glottal stops uncontested. A drunkard's dream. He lives in a perennial meat sweat, only moves as extreme need requires, and then at a rubber snail's pace. Fat, elastic band joints and beefy limbs yawning. Even when that ancient urge stirs, wet in down below folds, he just lays right back and snaps a band of fingers to summon his infinity from the reeds. And as a bonus, I'm going to read another poem that made the shortlist called Shark Teeth, and it is about the beaches full of the blackened, petrified shark teeth. At the beach we sit on grins, with our sandpaper bottoms polishing overbites to glass, and try to imagine how these pearly blacks came to be here, once shed from ancient mouths, unlocked and unloaded from mechanical jaw bones, rendered effectively inert. Thousands of choppers lost in a single lifetime, one by one, dislodged, replaced, a round-the-clock enamel factory of Henry Ford-esque efficiency. What became of those assembly line byproducts? Did lateral cusplets and serrations drift listlessly through millennia, floating alongside the flotsam and jetsam of sea junk and jellyfish schools? Surf relentless swells and curls, riding centuries of big rollers before finally being spit out, petrified on this shore? I pity the tooth fairy, having neither the time nor the means to deliver whatever currency this vast collection might fetch. Nor the opportunity, really, as these fish don't stop for sleep. Instead, they chase down wakes in concentric circles, swirling. Haunted by chronic loss, they harbor the common knowledge of neurotics, that eventually all our lovers run away. Even our own body parts abandon ship on the regular. Thanks everyone, and be well, stay safe.
Quick Jim. Good evening, friends. Thanks for being here. Also, thanks to FreeFall Magazine and Gary Barwin for selecting my story as the winner of this year's FreeFall Short Story Contest. I have to tell you, when this magazine showed up in my mailbox, I told my wife, "It's beautiful. I want to be published in this magazine." And it's happening. For that, I am very grateful. Thank you. Quicks Jim. Also, before I launch into a reading of the story, $3, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge, shout out Biblioasis Books in Windsor, my favorite bookstore in Canada, let alone Southern Ontario. There's one in Kelowna that's a close second, but this is Biblioasis time. We just keep that in mind. And I want you all to let Dan know that I'm taking really good care of this one. I think it's one of the first books Biblioasis got when it opened. And yeah, so that all said, let's jump into the story. Oh, right. Sorry. This is for Tina, who's at Biblioasis, whose COVID hair is far more elegant and classy than mine. I'm going all caveman here and loving it. Chucky, Alistair George, Miracle Johnny, Harold Billy, and some others stood around Alistair's bonfire one night, drinking tea mostly, maybe a little whiskey in one or two of them mugs. They traded stories all night. Each man shared his best hunting story. Miracle Johnny, almost as good a hunter as Chucky, didn't tell stories as good as Chucky's. Not even close. This one time I went out, hey, just me, my 303, a box of shells, and a flask of whiskey. Old Harold, all screwed up face, said, "You didn't take any water with you into that country? Even I take water when I go up them hills." Sure, old Harold took water with him all right, but he only drank from the jug of wine he kept under a blanket in the bed of his pickup. Old Harold didn't hunt or fish anymore. Got cataracts, got rheumatoid hips, got the shakes. Miracle nodded. "Well, when I go up them hills now, I will take a lot of water, only water. And I'm going to tell you why." Miracle never started a story in a way that made you want to stop and listen. Chucky topped up everyone's tea. Harold cradled it for a moment before gulping down 5 mouthfuls. Old Harold needed a bellyful of wine to feel normal, and he hasn't felt normal in a long, long time. Oh, hello, cat. Bitsy, everybody. Say hi. And try to keep your bum out of the camera this time. Thank you. Old Harold thought everybody needs a belly full of wine to feel normal. Belly full of that Jesus blood. Belly full of holy goodness. But after old Harold got them yellow eyes, Shmam said, "No more wine." Doctor said, "No more wine." But old Harold whined, "But not touch it now." Old Harold quieted, Alistair quieted, Chucky quieted. Even the fire stopped crackling. Chucky sometimes waited before telling the rest of his story. So Miracle waited. And waited. Then this one time I go out in the bush behind Gregory Abbott's. You know the one. Anyways, thick bush sometime. Not now. Fucking clear cut 200 yards in. One time thick forest for days. Not so much now. Heard about a 5-point white-tailed up there. So I go up there, see for myself, hey. Don't take long to pick up its trail. Fresh scat, maybe an hour ago, maybe 2. Stalking him so quiet, I catch 2 bulls. Stalking him so quiet, I catch 2 bull snakes humping. never heard me coming. About noon now, and so hot them snakes is sweating. Sweat just pouring out of me. My gaunch feels pissed in, hey? Alistair said, making a swimming hole for your spiaks, isn't it? Jackie said, more like a sauna. Alistair said, nah, more like a sweat bath, innit? Sweat bath. Now that's a good one. Anyways, still not getting any closer to him, and I'm thirsty. So I take a snort of whiskey. Before you know it, no more whiskey. Them last few drops stick like a stain to the bottom. Still thirsty, but... And now sweating so much, like someone shoved a garden hose up my ass and used me as a sprinkler. Now dizzy. So dizzy I got to sit, flop, no shade, fucking clear cut. No shade anywhere, fucking clear cut. Little creek used to run from here. Little creek used to run through here from a spring. No more. Fucking clear cut. Still 3 miles to Johnson Creek, nearest water. Johnson Creek now was Leash, now Johnson. So time kind of stopped. Can hardly hold up my head now. Like too much drink in me. Or bad meat, but no cramps. No quishnoshinek. Mouth dry, world all blurry. Felt that way fighting in Korea. Got the malaria and nearly died over there. Malaria just about killed me. Not Chinese bullet, but malaria. But no quishnoshinek, just sweat. A lot of sweat. Dead soon. Say goodbyes. Humelth shvaem. Humelth Jaws. Gonna miss that but Jaws. Hey, hey. Say shiemet. Ask Cookie Koopy. Keep them safe. And that's where we'll stop. Bitsy and I. Enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you for being here. Quick Jim.
Hi, my name's Kim Fonner. I am a poet from Sudbury, Ontario, and I'm going to read you my poem, which is called Place of Origin, Unmapped. This galaxy, so star-scattered, gathers its pigments of madder root, cinnabar, vermilion, the blood of lost dragons, and the flares of last night's setting sun. Soon, the petals of misplaced poppies are mistakenly crushed, slowly, underfoot. Pale scent, always only ever of summer rising. Then, cobalt, ultramarine, and cerulean, swept sensual, and the ghosts of long-dead stars that flicker endlessly through splices of a ripped and torn night. The cornflower in a meadow, the shadow curve of a moth's wing under moonlight, the smudge of a bruise on an arm, shadowed and unclear. So the husks of insects stir themselves into the remainders of indigo plants, pleat themselves into skirts like painted fans, dance spinning into circles like fierce dervishes. Imagine a center that isn't certainly mapped. So the songs of neglected planets sing orchestral, tiny notes strung out across the sky, the way home. Thanks for asking me to read. I so appreciate it. Take care.
Atrial fibrillation. My husband gets a new diagnosis. Atrial. A trial. A lair. The heart stutters, flaps like butterfly wings, or tentative clapping in the nearly empty concert hall. Fibrillation. The heart staggers like a bibulous uncle. He doesn't look ill. Not now. Not yet. The doctor, short-breathed with optimism, talks about a new generation of blood thinners. Now we've moved on to drugs with names like the gauzy spring collection in Milan. Eliquis, Pradaxa, Xarelto. You can't be too thin, and neither can your blood. Fibrillation, my husband humming softly at the wheel. And as we begin the journey to the lake, we don't talk about the other journey he may have to take alone.
Hi, I'm Cadence Mandibura. I'm a writer and editor in Victoria, BC. I'm so pleased to be part of this FreeFall launch today, even if it does have to be at a distance. Before I start, I would love to give a shout out to all the independent booksellers out there. Two of my favorites here in Victoria are Monroe Books and Russell Books, but I encourage everyone to support their local bookstores. It's such a huge support to the literary community, and we appreciate it so very much. And now I'd like to read for you the start of my story, A Tea Party for Nomi. Hiking her favorite trail a week after the windstorm, Nomi turned a bend to find a family setting up a fairy door. The practice wasn't uncommon around here, whimsical hikers adding a tiny door and a bit of magic to the hollows of trees or stones. But Nomi was surprised to see a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old. The steep, boring climb didn't normally attract families. Nomi came to this trail mainly for its solitude. Of course, she wasn't entirely alone. Bastian, her golden retriever, was always with her. That was important, because of the other reason she returned to this hike so often. Every time she climbed this mountain, she would stop halfway to the summit at one particular clearing, a flat lookout with a toothy cliff face bursting from the field grasses. Standing at the edge, Nomi would gaze out and down, wondering if the 10-meter fall would be permanent enough. But then Bastian would bark or lick her palm, and she would remember that she couldn't strand him up here. Still, contemplating the fall was cleansing to her, like the sharp iodine sting of keeping a wound clean. Here, a good 20 minutes below the clearing, the sudden candy colors of this family punctured the cool greens of the forest. The little girl, wearing a fluorescent pink windbreaker and a yellow tutu over her pants, was adding ornaments to the fairy threshold with her mom. The door was already in place, a freshly painted summer sky blue with a golden knob, snugged into the circle of a mossy log. The dad was about 20 meters farther up the trail, trying to capture a bird through an oversized zoom lens. The woman looked up at Nomi's approach and waved a greeting, the long ponytail threaded through her ball cap echoing the movement of her arm. Nomi nodded back and whistled for Bastian to heel, resting a hand on the warm straw of his fur as he came to her side. At the sound of an amiable woof from Bastian, the little girl spun, abandoning her fairy door to meet Nomi as she came up the path. "Don't worry, he's friendly," said Nomi to the mother, hearing her question before it was asked. "So's she," said the woman, indicating her daughter with a good-natured quirk of her eyebrows. The little girl reached out to touch Bastian, then stopped herself. "Can I pet her?" she asked dutifully. "Yes, you may," said Nomi. "He's actually a boy. His name is Bastian." "Bastian," said the girl, her tongue not quite capturing the syllables. Her fingers starfish wide, she patted Bastian's blonde neck. He sat like a good boy, his tongue out in a big dog grin. A giggle burbled out of the girl, her glee rising in a huge baby-tooth smile. She was a vision up here, a little like a fairy herself, if fairies had dirt-smudged knees and loops of untamable hair, and shoes shaped like glittery, grass-stained unicorns. "Fashion," she repeated as her mother joined them. The girl flicked her clear, adoring eyes up to Nomi. "Would you like some tea?" she asked with studied formality. "What?" said Nomi, glancing back at the fairy door with a squirm of alarm. In front of the wooden doorway was a miniature tea set, a tubby teapot with a pert spout, thimble-sized cups, and even a little creamer and sugar dish. Ready for the fairies. "Thank you so much!"
So my bookstore shout out will be for the Librairie Bonder on Westminster Avenue in Montreal, West, Quebec. And this poem is titled Questions for David in the Presence of Death. It's a variation on a ghazal, the Arabic form that has a rhyme scheme and is usually a lament. Questions for David in the presence of death. Nighthawk calls lure you, twist you through their chafing spaces, pull us into their skinny labyrinth, into grief's scattered black places. How quickly must you go? How far from our startled gazes glassy? How long before you waver, break the bonds that now together lace us? Lips tremble as we repeat the plea, how quickly must you go? As quick as red cloud fire flashes, showing its morning traces, etches its presence on sharp mountain peaks, withers slowly into yesterday's snow. We pray for ease, wish you soft paths, God's graces. From the folds of Idaho canyons, we shout at those damned nighthawks, haggling your return until our cries muffle, lose their urgent basis. We search southward to Wildwood, where we think you will be lingering, wanting to be with your cousins, memorize their laughs and their faces. We imagine again the deep blinking fathoms of your soft blue eyes. Where are you now? Swirling in pools of desert air at blessed stasis? You haunt us at the edge of night, tease us round dawn's yellow blur. At noon, we see those mariposas blancas flutter round blue vases. And then we know that you have gone, leaving us behind, mouthing our last question. Why quickly must you go? Warped disbelief raises. You should have stayed longer with us. After another starless night, we'll ask to hear you speak again. Put that special slant to your phrases. We'll complain, perhaps even to God, the suddenness as silence raises. We'll ask Peter to bestow 3 kisses on you, free you from death's mazes. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Praises in between.
I'm Blaine Newton, and these are the first few pages of my short story, By the Numbers. It was on a Tuesday when the rain finally came after the long drought. The same Tuesday when he began to suspect that critical events in his life always seemed to happen in years when his age was a prime number. Clearly 1 is not prime, but a fundamental unit, a building block. Accordingly, it had been nothing but a series of new and interesting things. Walking, words, the primary functions of sustainable life, conveyed to him by others, parents and observers, the unimpeachable testimony of family snapshots. But by the ages of 2 and 3, prime numbers both, he had begun to dabble in an awkward self-awareness, had begun to take ownership of his own stories. 5 had brought school, 7, a first kiss. 11 was an awakening of his understanding that the rivalries and violence inherent in the schoolyard extended to the larger world. 13. Puberty. 17. Beer, high school graduation, university, and a first love won, then lost. 19. Sex. 23. A wife. 29. A child. 31. The loss of his child. 37. A divorce. 41. The accident that claimed his parents. Until his 43rd birthday, when he found himself reaching for the door of an art gallery in order to escape a sudden downpour. The route was one he'd often followed on his way from his 3rd floor walk up to his job, before he lost his job, a birthday surprise he hadn't anticipated, the HR representative sincerely awkward for once, escorting out the newly redundant actuary with the cake stain on his lapel and the party hat on his head. He must have passed this door countless times, perhaps even glanced at the art on display in the windows, but he never entered. Now, as he shook off the rain, smoothed back his wet hair, a woman approached with a glass in hand. "Glad you could make it," she said by way of a greeting. She was taller than he by several inches, although that may have been due to her heels, and younger by several years, although that could have been a trick of the gallery light. "This nasty weather seems to have kept people away in droves," she continued. Clearly, she meant this as some kind of joke, because she smiled, a rather pleasant smile, he thought, and seemed embarrassed by his silence. "It's period paintings and photographs," she continued. "Local artists, work from the late 40s and early 50s, some more modern, some older." Again a pause. "May I offer you a glass of wine?" She gestured toward a nearby table. Sitting on the white tablecloth were a dozen or so bottles of moderately priced red and white wine, domestic, perhaps in keeping with the art, attended by 2 neat rows of stemmed glasses. "If you don't have one, I can't. And, well, it's been a little slow." She glanced down at the glass in her hand, then slowly back at him, and he was uncertain whether it had been recently emptied or only just picked up. "Red, please." And she turned away, and he stepped from the foyer into the room, smelt of varnish and dust. "These are mostly pen and ink with 1 or 2 charcoal," she said, assuming a question he never anticipated, as she offered a glass of red wine and gestured vaguely to the small prints framed and matted in black lining the walls at eye level. A white wine was her choice. "The room through this door is oils and watercolors. Through that door are the photographs. The 3 rooms are connected. It's a circuit." She handed him a colored piece of paper, apparently as a guide. "Clockwise or counterclockwise, left to right, it's your choice. We don't profile." "What is this a showing? An install?" he asked, turning the paper over in his hand. "An installation." He hadn't yet taken the offered glass, but now he reached out, if for no other reason than to avoid her look of disappointment. "Oh, you're here by accident." "Well, the rain, of course." "Ah. Well, I should just be glad there's someone else in the building. They told me there was a ghost, but you can't even rely on them anymore." Thank you for listening, and thank you to FreeFall Magazine.
Hi, my name is Anna Navarro. This is my poem, Sestina, First and Second Loves. Mandy met her first love at a movie, the kind she didn't really have to watch. Mostly, she was busy stumbling around the cock in her right hand. When he came all down her arm and suggested they go fuck in the bathrooms, she felt like a real winner. Mandy did lots of romantic things with her first love, like win arcade games and talk about movies, the kind she really did have to watch. She took baths with him until the water got cold and gray, and watched the sun go down over smokes. He liked stroking her arm, and she liked stroking his cock. Except he turned out to be a real dick, so Mandy walked out mid-hummer, feeling like a real winner. The thought of his fingertips on her arm made her gag, so she watched a lot of movies she didn't really have to watch, and spent a lot of time strewn out on the floor in the bathroom. Mandy met her second love in a house party bathroom, where they kissed with the door unlocked and he got a hard-on. His parents turned out to be rich and bought him nice watches that he and Mandy sold to buy pot, feeling like real winners. He rolled spliffs really neat and wasn't much for movies, so mostly they just fucked and fell asleep on each other's arms. When he got really high, he'd grab her arm too hard and lock her in the bathroom for being a whore. She thought they must have looked just like a movie, all the yelling and smoke tumbling around his naked cock, her skin blooming shades of purple. If she made that movie, she would win some kind of award, she thought, and people would really have to watch. So Mandy stuffed as many of his watches as she could in her bra and back pockets and hands, and left, feeling like a real winner. She found an apartment with a big bathroom and spent a lot of time with the faucet over her pussy, thinking about all the movies she'd seen.
And whenever you're ready.
My name is Justin Faba, and this is an excerpt from my short story, The Apprentice. Putrid, low-tide rot and garbage stink walloped her nose. Cool, clammy air rolled over her bare arms, and she broke out into goosebumps. Dark towers ascended around her, their lofty heights lost in a noxious haze that shimmered in a mesmerizing spectrum of shifting neon colors. Nightlife droned like a dormant wasp nest. A clatter arose from the alley. She jolted and looked down to see a vagrant bearing a duffel bag, navigating through the maze-like mounds of garbage. He sifted through the dimness, searching for something. Beneath a lamp that misdirected a swarm of insects, he paused and scrutinized a span of barren concrete between two grease-ridden dumpsters. She jerked back from the edge when he suddenly scanned his surroundings. "Don't see me." He grunted with satisfaction. His joints clicked and popped as he stooped to sit cross-legged on the grimy asphalt. What is he doing? She glanced at her open window and warm bed, then, silent as an owl, descended into the stench. He slowly zipped his bag open, and a horde of silver canisters glittered inside. He dug through the pile and strained to twist select lids open. He removed a scratched plastic basin and color-spattered plate and set both down before his knees, like sacrificial altars. He twisted the neck of a plastic water bottle and emptied its contents into the basin. With reverence, he unraveled a rolled black towel and revealed an arsenal of paintbrushes. Finally, he retrieved a rattle can and rattled it. The can hissed and spattered in his hand as he slashed porous dead gray to midnight blue. That's vandalism. If I alert the Good Neighbor Crime Report, my number will go up. But that feels wrong. His clothes were in tatters. His skin was filthy. Before, he moved like a brittle spirit. Now, he was alive, flowing with the grace of a crane. He set down his spray can and held brushes in his left hand like crossed chopsticks. A Buddhist statue, peaceful amidst the refuse, sitting motionless for so long that she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then the aerosol dried, and his reverie ended. He let the thick brush drink from the basin and fed dark jade to the thin one. Dip, flick, flick, curve, whirl, flick, wiggle, shift. Dip, drag, wiggle, shift. Dip, dip, curve, flick, swirl, shift, swirl, flick, flick. Falling water in Three Peak Valley. From the last platform, she watched him replace concrete with wilderness as he deftly shifted between brushes to apply or dilute and drag concentrate down, like hanging moss. It almost looks like he's dancing. I won't report him. I don't think he's a criminal. He looks like he's at home. But if someone else reports him, he could get in trouble, and his number could drop. She gripped the final rungs and lowered herself to the ground. Lost in a trance, he switched his jade brush for a fresh one, fed it iron brown and a dip of rust red, and mixed the hues together on the porcelain plate. He planted the base of a peach tree upon a cliff, gazing over the valley. He gave it a mighty trunk, and let its crown grow as it should. He knew approached unnoticed, until she gently gripped his shoulder and said, "You shouldn't do that. Your number will go down." He stopped mid-stroke and spoke to the wall. "Can my number depict harmony? What does that even mean?" She kicked a slimy banana peel away from her foot and replied, I don't know. I don't think so." He hummed and fed vermilion white, scarlet red, and dandelion yellow to a new brush. Then why should I concern myself with one? He doesn't care about his number? That makes no sense. Low scorers get bad lives, that's what Father says. My parents say we need high numbers to live better. Dip, dab, flick, wiggle, flick, whirl, shift, twist. Apical pink blossom. What is a better life? Bloom after bloom sprouted beneath his brush while she thought on the answer. What kind of question is that? Mother and Father always talk about a better life, but what does that mean? If they could just see how great I am at flying and be happy for me, I think my life would be better. That would make me happy. Being happier every day, I guess. He applied tiger orange and tepid silver onto new brushes. Dip, curve, streak, streak, slash, flick, flick, wiggle, shift, whirl, flick. Koi fish leaping through froth. This brings me joy and peace. Art is my freedom and purpose. He's stubborn. She spoke with more volume. You will get in trouble if they catch you vandalizing. Why don't you just paint on paper like we do in art class? He set down his tools and shut his eyes. He twirled his scraggly chin hairs between his gnarled fingers until he sat up straighter and reached for the canister of granite gray. Dip, press, turn, drag, flick, drag, shift, drag, drag. Cragged cliff face. The mountain is dangerous, yet insight is found at its top. Mountains? What do mountains have to do with anything? Her face furrowed and she said, I don't understand what you mean. He chuckled and stopped defining his peaks. Forgive me, I indulge in metaphors. He turned to facing you for the first time. He seemed so happy right now, but his wrinkles looked like they were drawn by sadness. He smiled warmly at her and bowed his head before gathering jet black on a fine brush to make his mark under the seam. My name is Cheng Yen. I'm pleased to meet you. Hello, sir. My name is Yin Yu. I like to paint too. He gestured for her to sit at his right, and she sat beside him as he gathered fresh brushes, dipping the thick one in water and swirling cream yellow and titanium white together on the dish with the other. Dip, dip, flick, 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 dip, press, twist, shift, whirl, twist. Radiant moon and stars. If that is so, why do you think I should stop? Well, honestly, I'd like to keep watching, but I don't want either of us to get into trouble. The rusty scaffolding and dirty windows resonated with his loud kookaburra laugh. Dip, twirl, flick, twirl, wiggle, shift, wiggle, whirl. Cloud nestled under moon. Do not fear being found. Inspect the walls for yourself. If your device is not with you, then there are no cameras here. He's right. No cameras. And I forgot my phone up there. But what about the police? They're always out. Aren't you worried you'll be caught? Dip, drag, lift, shift, drag, shift, flick, shift, drag, lift. Moonbeams and mist. My score was made lowest. Top or bottom, it does not matter, so long as I move my brush.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Johnston, and today I'm going to be reading to you from my story The Thief, The Crier, and Those Damned Dark Ages. We're going to pick up in the story where the thief is pilloried in the square and the dreadful Lord Pettyworth has just arrived on the scene. Good afternoon, Pellix, thundered a well-dressed man clad in the vermilion livery of a noble. With a strut, he moved through the square with arms held aloft as though he embraced all Pillicdom. A small mumble of greeting rolled around the crowd, unenthusiastic and dismal. What a bunch of assholes, the noble growled under his breath as he approached the center. As he walked, an entourage of serfs followed behind. Nearly a dozen men, led by Greg the farmer, bore a large wooden crate in their arms. They reached the spot a slight distance from the thief and laid their parcels on the ground at their feet. Ladies and gentlemen, the noble drawled, I, your most esteemed Lord Pettyworth of Yob Manor, have heard of your plight. I come to remedy your ails and rally your spirit. The townsfolk silently looked about the square, quizzically examining the face of each of the neighbors. I've come to give you shit, said the Lord as his eyes rolled through the inside of his skull. Oh, cried the tanner. Lovely, stated the blacksmith. Ah, shit, muttered the thief. With a self-satisfied smirk, the Lord placed his foot on one of the crates in front of him and tipped it over, spilling dozens of tomatoes onto the stonework of the road. This man, he said as he gestured towards the thief, stole from me. You. He stole from you? Let's throw fruit at him. Those are tomatoes, Lord, the priest cried out as he gazed upon the small red orbs dotting the road. Vegetables they are. 'Tis, the weaver called out, 'tis most definitely vegetable. Once again, the Lord's eyes danced in their sockets. Fine, let's throw veggies at him. Nah, nah, came the authoritative voice of the town's carpenter. I think you'll find that they are a fruit, Lord. The statement pushed the crowd over the edge. In the blink of an eye, the entire town began screaming at one another. Mothers railed against fathers, brothers spewed fury at sisters, and one random old lady gave a dog a stern talking to. The thief laughed hysterically, and the Lord dropped his head to his chest and shook it. The crier picked up one of the tomatoes and, casting a furtive glance around the town, quickly pocketed it. Enough! Screamed the Lord, his voice rising above the cacophony and silencing the enraged crowd. For God's sake, you're missing the point, which is that we are going to throw this fruit, this food at that damned bastard of a thief. As the crier stood perplexed next to the thief, the crowd surged forward and began scooping up every tomato they could get their hands on. All smiles and cooperation, they loaded each other's arms, passing tomatoes around until no one could possibly carry another. Now snarling, they turned towards the thief to begin the pelting. But upon realization that they couldn't throw a single piece with their arms so full, nearly every peasant present simply dropped the mass that they held. Tomatoes crashed to the ground in a symphony of overripe splatters and a flurry of bouncing greenish thuds. Morons! Yelled the Lord. Those weren't cheap, you know. But the crowd ignored Pennyworth as they stooped to pick up their whatever pieces of fruit, vegetable, that had survived the fall. Well, crier, the thief said slyly, he said you'd be with me for 3 days. How about now? I did, the crier replied as he slowly began sidestepping towards the crowd. But I never said I was an honest man, did I? Coward. Yes, but a clean one. Once the crier reached the edge of the circle that had formed around the pilloried man, the crowd unleashed a loathsome hail of gooey red madness. A pungent aroma of acidic tang filled the air. Laughter swelled amongst the peasants, led by the loud guffaw emanating from Pennyworth's breast. Meanwhile, the pillory trembled under the force of a fierce tomato storm. Some were rotten and mashed into the thief's face with a sloshy splash. Others weren't quite ripe and bounced painfully off of his head. It was these he hated the most, as they often rolled back into the greedily grasping clutches of an exuberant villager. Ouch! My ear hole! Yelled the thief as one such tomato smashed into the bloody mass where his ear used to be. Aim for the right side of my head! The right! Clang, 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 rang the crier's bell. Aim for his right side, people, he said around a mouthful of tomato he now munched. Let's not be savages. The splatter and squashing of exploding tomatoes continued for another 20 minutes before the massive crates finally ran dry. When the supply of produce ran out, Pennyworth was the first to turn and leave, heading back to the town, returned to his manor for the rest of the day. The peasants headed back to their shops, chuckling and smiling as they went. Who's going to clean this all up, you reckon? Asked the crier of the thief as he sat down next to him. Oh, I'll clean it, said the thief dryly as he wiggled his hands within the confines of the pillory, eliciting a small smirk from the crier. Thank you.
The Kettle Bomber. This poem is for Paramjit. Each Sunday he sinks into our sofa for a visit after temple. I'm told to serve him cups of chai with extra cloves, plates of sweets with pistachio eyes winking in collusion, sickly fragrant with rose water and my parents' adulation. He sits crowned with a saintly white turban, long beard flowing with ease, hiding a holy man's hate. He knows how to fill a jar with absence. He knows what it means to sliver a sentence into two, teeth slicing into the meat of loosened words. I imagine his daughter at 18, bold and disobeying, cleaving tradition by marrying love. I imagine her opening the parcel he sent, a kettle. I feel the boom unmaking her, spilling a bloodline, mending his honor by splintering a daughter, propelling him to the helm of a temple, propelling him to fame, propelling him to our sofa. Test case. I'm an experiment gone wrong, lifted from the sweat of monsoons, uprooted from memoried soil, smudged with footprints of peasant farmers, sturdy stock surviving cholera and dengue, drought and deluge, but not a fall down a borehole. I was masala powder, broken down into individual spices, each a pungent marvel and whole. I spooled from mothers who babied slick water buffaloes, from fathers who raged and grew long mustaches. I breathed air heavy with jasmine, heavier with embers of dung paddy fires, while I suckled on a mango teat. I was hollowed out, transplanted into 3 inches of unapologetic snow, littered with boot prints and paw prints of no clear origin, into small town fright, into wounds laced with wounds, transplant unsuccessful.
Hi, my name is Orfeo Angeluza, and I'm going to read my poem, Ballad of a Free Man. Drenched in heat, we run towards our freedom. We run like innocent sins to the place where death may meet us. The monochrome worshippers, they run towards us. They run us through the wicked desert, and as they run, they shout these blasphemies at us. They run their mouths, and hatred and fatigue will bite at their feet, buy us some time. I grasp his hand, his sweaty, frightened hand. We run like parched devils to the edge of the cliff, feel the burning dust run up our calves, cake our shoes and shirts, just like everything else in this wretched place. We stutter to a stop and look below. The river runs angry and jagged through the canyon. Its tide runs in our ears with translucent sound. In 2 minutes, they'll be upon us. I grasp his face. His hands run up my arms. My fingers run through his glistening coiled hair. I touch an angel run away from heaven, I am sure. I look him in his eyes. They're green-yellow with love and red with desperation. He says, "Lover, the water is 100 feet below. Lover, we won't make it," he says. I say, "Lover, it matters not. Either way, we'll be together," I say. He says, "Lover, let's say a prayer," he says. We curl our palms together, and he says, "Father, this here is who I love. Father, if you love us at all, you let us go. You let us go. All love is the same in your eyes, is it not? I beg you, Father, bless our love." We touch foreheads, and in my mind I say, "Father, you sent something holy on this earth not many years ago. Father, I met the gift you sent. I touched his scars, Father. I love him. And I may not be worthy, Father, I know. But he deserves every piece of my soul and every inch of my body and so much more. Father, if you love him at all, you'll bless our love." I open salty eyes and kiss him one more time. My tongue runs down his like an attempt at finality. They are becoming bigger and bigger in the distance, each and every of their features pursed in anger, in blind thirst for scapegoat blood. I grasp his hand, his trembling hand, and we leap over the edge. The river runs in our ears, a welcome as we plunge towards the waves to freedom. This one's called Filthy Rich. Storms don't like anything far-sighted, I think. Here, when it rains, the forest comes alive. You can see it breathe. The trees and shrubs are filthy rich. The coins drip from the feathered crowns and land clean in the moss. The treasury is to be kept under lock and key from the likes of us. If you look too long below the bushes, the green's so dark it's almost sweet under your teeth. The blurry blackness seems to bleed out in a way. It calls you gently, "Darling, come here. Sweet baby, don't you want to know what's underneath? Love, there are never any eyes gazing at you from below, I swear. Little one, I bet you want to rest under the shade, on the cool ground, just a minute. It's no wicked trick or anything. The earth just wants us home. She wants us to lay down, be quiet, and be bones a little bit more quickly."
All right, now we're ready. Okay. Hello, my name is Joan Shillington, and I'm going to read you a poem, Midnight Run, that's just been published in my new book, Let This Lake Remember, out this fall by Frontenac House. Midnight Run. It was a thrill to be Dad's right-hand man in crime, filling the boat with gas, untangling nets into a metal wash tub. We shoved off at sun's half-mast, sped across the lake, and strung nets off Reservation Shore. Motor off, we stood side by side, pulled dripping nets from the water. Not a syllable uttered. Water laps soft, small rub of net against boat, inaudible fish gasp, and my gut fear band police or RCMP lay in wait for us. Boat search, handcuffs, jail terms amplified within me. Heart pounding, every sense peaked beyond the roar of our return across the lake. I kept lookout for logs, flashing lights, only allowed my body to relax when we hoist our boat above water and wheelbarrow the catch to shore, in love with the exhilaration of escape and pride that Dad needed my help. The entire night, illegal as hell.
Mixed media. In fog by morning light, the Bosphorus is two-dimensional, a painting of itself. Barges and tugboats, torn from photographs, superimposed. They materialize near the shore, with no horizon to sail from. An oil tanker lies on its side, a slicked bird, a bloated, beached whale. All hands abandoned ship, their bony fingers tore rust holes in metal. This a place no spirit haunts. In the thick, I see no further than the next shore, one color crashing another. Entire continents sunk, faded as after a paint-thinner shipment spill, surf erasing rock, plant, animal, all. Without Asia, no more Chinese paper fans, no more oranges all the way from. The Great Wall, a refugee's dream of how Berlin felt. Meanwhile, on CNN, the Ark of Japan sails away from a melting Kyoto, a junk full of panda bears and computer chips.
Honey. 1, 2, 3, 4. The door swings open. Dried blood crusts on scuffed elbows, split skin adorns kneecaps. Courtesy of the pavement in front of Grandma's house. The bike, the chain unhinged, mother's interrogation. Flick of the wrist, dismiss. Blood stains panties. It's time for the talk. The birds and the bees flutter, wing to wing. A bumblebee hovers, an open door. 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4. She faces a piano. Dried blood crusts on scuffed elbows, split skin adorns kneecaps. Courtesy of the rocks at the playground. Fingers dance over ivory keys, her scales unhinged. Mom makes her wear a floral dress. Flick of the wrist, dismiss. Blood stains panties. Notes pirouette on releve, distant worlds flutter from her hands. Wing to wing, a bumblebee enters, an open window. Pump 1, pump 2, pump 3, pump 4. Rocks press against skin. Dried blood crusts on scuffed elbows. Split skin adorns kneecaps. Courtesy of the gravel behind Grandma's house. Uncle Mark, whiskey, unhinged. Flick of the wrist, dismiss. Blood stains panties. Palms of hands, resistance. Nobody listens. Is this the birds and the bees? Eyelids flutter shut. Wing to wing. A bumblebee lands. Stinger penetrates skin.
Wasn't that amazing, everyone? It was so wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. The magazine is on sale from our website and in booksellers across the country, including Shelf Life, Owl's Nest, Pages, and Next Page in Calgary. Thank you to all the booksellers for letting us into your store before hours so that we could do some of these recordings. Thank you to Adam Gerber for putting this video together, Michaela Ritchie for doing all the social media, and Patrick McAneely for putting the issue together. Thank you to Frontenac House, the Alexander Writer Center, and Freehand Books for contest sponsorship this year. We really appreciate your support every year. I'd also like to thank all of our volunteers here at FreeFall. Micheline and I could not do this without you, and we really appreciate that you're here with us. Our next contest judge is Calgary's own Poet Laureate and friend of FreeFall, Natalie Meisner. Let's see our website for more details on how to enter. I hope you really enjoyed this evening, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you.
I was peddling medicine down the good red road today. I saw her there, daisies in her hair. She said, teach me why sweetgrass grows this way. And I blinked, said, I don't know. Why don't you ask someone with better things to show? But the corners of her lips lift like curls of sage smoke, meeting eyes the color of a sweetgrass sky. And her smile lifts me high above the cedars that grow along the coast where she learned to fly, where she learned to fly. Silence in the sacred fire's glow, laying on a Pendleton, Orion up and us below. And she'd talk of Mars and Jupiter, but that's not what I heard, 'cause every word she said became a medicine song that's looping all night long. Maybe that's just in my head. The corners of her lips lift like curls of sage smoke, meeting eyes the color of a sweetgrass sky. And her smile lifts me high above the cedars that grow along the coast where she learned to fly. She learned to fly, where she learned to fly, where she learned to fly, where she learned to fly. Of this medicine you bring, but it smells like sweet grass every time you sing. Where she learned to fly, where she learned to fly, where she learned to fly.
I would also like to take a moment to thank some of FreeFall's sponsors, without whom none of this would be possible as well. So I'd like to thank the Alberta Magazine Publishers Association, the Calgary Arts Development Association, the Government of Alberta, the City of Calgary, the Government of Canada Heritage Fund, and of course Magazines Canada. Thank all of them for their ongoing support. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who tuned in and participated in this wonderful event. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.